Welcome to The Explainer. We're jumping right in today with a really big update to U.S. work permit rules. One that's set to shorten how long many non-citizens can legally work in the country.
Okay, so there's been a major update to a federal policy, and honestly, it's a huge shift. It's going to directly impact the ability of thousands, maybe even more, to work in the United States. So let's really get into what's changing here. So, the big question is, are you affected? Now, it's super important to know that this isn't a blanket change. It's very category specific. So the first thing you need to figure out is whether or not this new policy actually applies to you.
All right, here's how we're going to break it down. We'll start with the policy shift itself, then look at the new validity periods. We'll cover exactly who is impacted, dig into the official rationale behind the change, and finally, talk about what this actually means for you.
Okay, first up, a major policy shift. Let's get right to the core of this new directive. What exactly is being changed? So at the heart of all this is something called the Employment Authorization Document, or EAD. You might know it as a work permit. For a lot of non-citizens, this little card is literally the key that unlocks the door to legal employment in the U.S. And here's the big takeaway. The maximum time that these work permits are valid is being cut, and cut significantly for certain groups. What this really means is that the whole cycle of applying for and renewing your work authorization, it's about to get a whole lot faster and, more frequent. Right, so how drastic are we talking here? Let's get into the specifics, the new validity periods, and look at the actual numbers. Wow, okay, so before you could get a work permit valid for up to 5 years. Now, for some people, that's being slashed down to just 18 months or even 12 months. To put that into perspective, for some folks, that's a validity reduction of up to 80%. That's a game changer. Okay, so that brings us to the big question. Who is impacted? Let's break down exactly which groups are facing these new, shorter time frames. This is really where you need to pay close attention. All right, let's look at the first group. These are the folks whose work permits are being reduced to a maximum of 18 months. And it's a pretty wide net, It covers people admitted as refugees, those granted asylum, and even people with pending asylum applications. It also includes those with pending adjustment of status applications, that's a big one, and people granted withholding of deportation or removal or who've applied for it. And then there's a second group, and their timeline is even tighter. We're talking a reduction down to just 12 months. This group includes people with temporary protected status, or TPS, both granted and pending. It also covers various folks who've been granted parole, like those paroled as refugees, and even spouses of entrepreneur parolees. So for them, it's a 1-year renewal cycle now. Okay, so when does all this kick in? This is super important. We're not talking about tomorrow. As you can see, the 12-month validity period becomes effective for applications pending or filed on or after July 22nd, 2025. And the 18-month period, that's for applications on or after December 5th, 2025. So there is a bit of a runway, but it absolutely means you need to start planning now. All right, Section 4, the official rationale. So, why? Why make such a big change? Let's dive into the official justification that was given. Well, the official line is that it's to, quote, deter fraud and detect aliens with potentially harmful intent so they could be processed for removal from the United States. Basically, the idea is to check in on people more often. The EAD renewal process becomes a kind of recurring checkpoint to look for any potential security risks. So the stated goals of the policy are pretty clear. It's about conducting more frequent vetting of non-citizens to make sure applicants don't threaten public safety. They also mention deterring fraud and, interestingly, preventing the promotion of, quote, harmful anti-American ideologies. So by shortening that validity period, the idea is they can conduct these screenings much more regularly. Okay, so that's the policy. But what does this mean for you in the real world? Let's talk about the practical side of this and what you might need to do. Well, the most obvious thing is that renewals are going to happen way more often. We're talking about thousands of people who will now have to go through the renewal process much more frequently than they did before. That means more paperwork, more keeping track of deadlines, and just less breathing room between applications.
And that brings us to the biggest risk here, a potential gap in your employment authorization. Think about it. With these shorter renewal cycles, any kind of delay in processing your application, and we all know those can happen, could create a period where you can't legally work. And that, of course, puts your income, your stability, everything at risk.
So what are the key steps to take? It's pretty straightforward, but you have to be on top of it. First, you absolutely have to identify your category. Figure out if you're in that 18-month or 12-month group. Second, note your expiration date. Be super aware of that new, shorter end date. And third, plan for an early renewal. You'll want to work with legal counsel if you have it to file as early as you possibly can. The whole goal here is to get that new EAD in your hand before the old one expires. That's how you avoid those employment gaps.
And all of this kind of leaves us with one big question, right? Does this policy signal a future of more frequent rolling security checks for all temporary authorization holders? Is this just the first step in a broader shift towards a kind of continuous vetting for everyone? That's something we'll just have to wait and see.